Call the meeting to order. And do we have minutes from the last meeting, or what's the next slide here, Eric?
The next slide is public comments.
So are there any members of the public that wish to comment? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, so we don't hear or see any members of the public. So what is agenda item number 3?
Now we're on to meeting minutes.
So, you've had the meeting minutes sent to you. So, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
So moved, Lonnie.
And a second? Don't be shy.
Seconded, Adrian.
Thank you, Adrian.
You're
So,
welcome.
under discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion passes. What we got next?
Budget and targets, the main event.
Oh, well, that's just like this is the reason we're here. So, Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you to explain explain the world of finances to us. Thanks.
All right, thank you, John. So,
One thing, Eric, if people have questions, you want them to stop you as you go, or what do you want to do?
Yes, please stop me as I go.
Okay.
Feel free to interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So as you guys are all aware, we typically start this process in early to mid-May, and we come to you guys with targets. And then we come to you in early June. Generally, when we do the targets, we go through revenues and part of the budget, and then we come back to you with a complete version in early June with the expenses, investments, and so on and so forth. This year, we're kind of compacting those two meetings into one due to all the work that we've been doing around trying to get ready for greenhouse gas reduction funds and think about how we're going to get that money out that really caused us to delay our target setting process. But we have a thoughtful process nonetheless, and I'll walk that through today. So kind of where are we now? Or the approach today, first I'm going to go through programmatic, organizational, and investment targets. Then we'll go through revenues and expenses in the budget as a whole. So where are we today in terms of impact and what have we done? The Green Bank's been around and up and running for 13 years, or close to 13 years. The first 12 years, so fiscal 12 through 23, we did 62,000 projects, 62,300 projects against a cumulative goal of 62,900. We deployed $2.4 billion against a goal of 2.44. And we installed 573 megawatts of clean energy capacity versus a target of 611. So I think that's we've learned how to set our targets and figure out what we can do over time. But we've also done stretch targets over the years, and so we have pushed our limits, and we continue to do so. Looking at the most recent full fiscal year, we did a total of 2,400 projects against a target of 2,000. That was fiscal 23. We deployed $166 million versus a target of 161. And we installed 63 megawatts versus a target of 57.5. So very successful year, FY23. FY24, we've scaled back targets a little bit. Some of that's due to not having the RCIP in our numbers that we previously did. Some of that has to do with not being as bold on or as bullish on energy storage solutions as we initially were, recognizing that that market, especially on the residential side, needs to grow. That said, so with about 8/10, a little over 8/10 of the year completed, 10/12, I guess is the appropriate fraction. We have done about 1,500 projects against a target of 1,868. We've deployed $218.7 million versus a target of 110, so we're great in that category. And we've installed 73 megawatts of capacity versus a target of 27. So fewer projects, greater value, more capacity is the overall story so far for this year. I do think our number of projects is going to catch up and we will be very close to that target, especially as we're seeing volumes continue to be robust in Smart 8, which is our number getter, despite the challenges that we've had with lenders.
Eric?
Yes.
If you look at 2023 and you look at we were responsible for 57 megawatts of capacity. Do we have any idea, like in the state as a whole, through all entities that were doing this, what the total number of megawatts was that was installed in the state for 2023?
I don't have it offhand. I can track something down for you, John.
Do you have any idea, like, even ballpark of like what the ratio tends to be between what we're doing and what the state does overall?
I haven't looked at it. I can tell you the place I would start is just, I would focus on the ZREX and what's the overall capacity for, not the ZREX, but the NRES auctions.
Mm.
And what have we done as a percentage of that? That's generally the larger systems, or it's certainly going to be larger than stuff on the residential side. I know how I would go about giving you an estimate. I just don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
Sure. But Connecticut as a whole is like maybe 6,000 megawatts of power annually. I mean, is that right?
Yeah, you're talking about like the peak demand. Yeah, so like in our first 10 years, we displaced about 10% of that, which we actually see in electric consumption, because when we first started the Green Bank back in 2011, on an annual basis, we would receive from ratepayers about $28 million.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we receive about $25 or $24 million. So we've been helping behind the meter reduce their energy consumption. But your capacity target, John, 6,000, 7,000 peak demand, we're at about 10% in our first 10 years of displacing, which is, knock on wood, why I don't think you see as many calls for brownouts as we used to back in, you might remember 10 to 15 years ago, they used to always talk about brownouts. You don't see, you don't see that hardly anymore.
So Brian, do you have a sense of even ballpark of like what part of the energy supply now overall is renewable in the state?
Well, our RPS would tell us that, the trading of certificates, not the citing of in-state capacity, but our RPS would tell us that we're at about, I think it's about 30% overall, but we're trading certificates, remember, so that means there are projects in other states that are likely selling into Connecticut. I would bet Connecticut's in-state capacity on the RPS is probably 15% of that 30%, so about 50%.
So I'm just wondering, as we look at those figures, like what it would take to, like, I don't know, double what we're doing or triple it or whatever. you know, to get there that much faster.
Yeah, no, your questions are super good, and Eric, let's definitely track these down because I think they're
Mhm.
really important to the structure of what's happened in Connecticut. On the, it depends what market we're talking about. Residential customers, commercial customers, or non-residential customers, and utility scale. So we have data in each of those sectors on deployment of solar fuel cells, class 1 technology.
Right.
The residential, as we've gotten out of it, it's now no caps and open market. The market has almost doubled. Like Connecticut is growing rapidly, like really rapidly. So it's almost close. It's more than Massachusetts in total. It's almost New York, what New York is deploying just for our small state. So we are on a watts per capita basis are easily leading all the northeastern states. So that's great. So it's like, okay, great. The market's working. Let it keep going. Now there are going to be consumer complaints, right? Because the market is now in a very rapid growth. You have all these different players coming in. So we're starting to see that. In fact, we got a notice today because we will be serving on the committee for solar consumer protection per a policy that passed this session. So more complaints are starting to happen. So we'll offer our perspectives there. But a lot of the numbers that we see on here are battery storage through our energy storage solutions program.
Oh, cool.
So those are, we're for the most part 100% of the market there, right? Because we're making it, we're creating it. And then there are some NRES, to Eric's point, non-residential energy solutions projects in there that we hear from Mackie quite a bit on CPACE and solar PPA that are in there that I would expect is probably 5 to 10% of the market, somewhere in that vein. But it's great. We'll take a look at these. These are good. This is a good summer.
Yeah, I didn't mean to trip up your rhythm there, Eric. But
No,
when I hear this,
no worries.
when I hear this stuff, it just gets me thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is Lonnie. I just want to, throw in. I mean, we always are looking at star models. Who are our star models now? I mean, and I realized as I began to talk to colleagues in California and Massachusetts, there are a lot of problems in those states. So who's doing it the best? And are we just going to set it? I mean, hopefully we're setting the standard. I mean, but is there somebody that we're competing with in terms of how much they're generating in the clean realm?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like competition's good, right? We're constantly like benchmarking ourselves against everyone. And it's not only that effectiveness on deployment, but the efficiency, how much of ratepayer dollars are we using to do
Yeah,
it?
that's right.
And then the equity, making sure it's reaching, our Justice 40 targets. And when we left the RCIP, we led all 3 of those categories in the entire Northeast region.
So that's really important. That's really important. Keep emphasizing, that because I think everybody goes, oh, well, California's, and of course, California's burning up because of all the old power lines that they never replaced. And I mean, the real in Worcester, Massachusetts is going crazy because there's solar panels everywhere and nowhere else in the state, apparently, or not a lot in other parts of the state. So there are all these models that when you kind of dig a little deeper, they have their own issues. So I think it's really good for us to know where we're excelling in real terms to compare and contrast, and also to sell it to legislators.
You have like New Jersey that has a lot of solar, but they just poured basketfuls of money into it.
Yeah. You remember back in the day they had the SREC market, and they were selling those solar renewable energy credits for $250 to $350. And our RCIP in comparison was $40. Just to give you a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Never use New Jersey as a good example. Never.
It was a good.
Plus, there's a senator who's been trading in gold. Or I guess his wife is, right? No, he had nothing to do with it. So yeah.
Yeah. Bitcoins, Lonnie. I think that they're ahead in Bitcoins. All right, Eric. Eric. Sorry. Go ahead.
No
Yeah,
worries,
go
no
ahead.
worries. So yeah, I basically, this is just kind of an overview of where we were before I head into this year's target. So I'll start with the financing programs. So what we're looking at here is we're going to do total of 23 CPACE projects for $32 million. We expect that to be 14.7 million of that to be a commitment from the Green Bank's balance sheet. We're hoping to get about $11.4 million out the door this year for the next fiscal year. I've highlighted on here, you'll see the NCIF commitment and the Solar for All commitment. Those are the different pots of money from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. The NCIF were really incentivized to get that money out the door as quickly as possible. So we will be trying to use as much of that as we can next fiscal year. But how we get the NCIF money out the door, we may shift that from program to program as we learn more about terms and conditions from the EPA and how those jive with the processes of our existing programs. The Solar for All is the commitment over the life of the award, which I believe is 6 years. So, yeah, high level, this is an increase year on year for CPACE, so good progress there. Looking at our Marketplace Assistance Program, our MAP, this is where we've been typically going after the municipalities and working with the state on the state's Lead by Example initiative, Executive Order 1. You'll see that those two channels of the Marketplace Assistance Program are actually the two smallest channels. Our focus here is really on affordable multifamily. We recognize this as a significant market gap and one that we're going to address with Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund resources. And that's where our internal resources are really focused. So we're aiming for 6 projects, 6 affordable multifamily projects in there that will be in the form of power purchase agreements, leases, or loans. And just a reminder, the municipal or the Marketplace Assistance Program is our white glove handheld solar program where we're really playing we're not playing quite the developer role, but we're holding the hands of the owners all the way through the project. So overall, that initiative, we're expecting 8 projects for the year. Adrian?
Hi, yeah, I wanted to know how many units this represents. Kind of try to get a handle on, the impact in terms of the community.
Great question. The answer is I don't know yet. It's really going to depend on which projects get over the line, and we have a bunch in the hopper. Our feeling is that we'll get 6 of those over. I don't know the reach of it, to your point.
Okay. And where are they focused, these buildings? What communities do you know?
So we're offering the program across the state, but our focus is really in the Justice 40 communities.
Okay.
In the official low income and distressed communities.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe just to add a little here, there are about 1,300 affordable housing properties designated in Connecticut by PURA as eligible for the Residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program. This was the result of Section 2 of Public Act 2158 that we led the passage of in 2021 with Senator Lopes. And subsequently, our team worked really hard with DEEP, DOH, CHAPA, and HUD to provide recommendations to PURA. So 1,300 properties represents about, in total, Adrian, 85,000 units.
Whoa.
When we looked at the medians, it was about 50 to 60 units per property. So you can imagine some properties go up really high and some spread out really far. The ones that spread out really far probably have good roofs and parking lots. So we want to kind of target those. But the team has worked really, really hard with the other agencies, and has built the team now with federal funds looking to finally unlock the market. So we have 6 here. I think our team's being really conservative. We're going to do a lot, but I think this is for it's just starting the program, a reasonable start.
That we've kind of shifted gears on, and that's illustrated by this chart. You see our multifamily pre-dev and our multifamily term products on here. We still offer those, but we're not pushing them. We really believe the way to make a significant impact in affordable multifamily properties is through the MAP program, where we're really bringing together all the resources that a property would need to get this done. And our outreach has really been top notch in terms of tracking down building owners and getting them involved. We're saying 6, but I think that that is conservative, recognizing that these projects will take a long time to come to fruition.
Right.
And others are behind it. This is ideally the tip of the spear here.
And how are the public housing? I mean, is there any public housing foreseen in this?
Yes.
Okay. How difficult is that to get over the hump?
I don't think we have a good answer yet because we haven't gotten one over the hump yet.
Okay.
But so at mid-year, I'll give you an update of overall opinion of public housing versus privately owned affordable multifamily.
Okay. I mean, I know that in Bridgeport, it's been something of a hurdle.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like anytime we try to get a property owner to move, to make a decision of what's in their best economic interests, they have lots of things on their minds. So that's going to be the big hurdle for us, is demonstrating that there is lots of economic benefit in it for them that they can use to reinvest in the improvement of the property, as well as economic benefit, most importantly, to the tenants, where we want to bring that energy burden down so that we put more money back in their pocket. But HUD on a national level has been great and just kind of evolving over time, where, historically, probably before 5 years ago, any economic benefit through utilities that would have inured to a tenant could have been offsetting to their HUD benefit that they were receiving from the housing. More recently, probably within the last couple of years, HUD has said, okay, if we're able to reduce energy costs through clean energy, then we want that economic benefit to inure to the tenant and not have to readjust their tenant benefits. So HUD's on board. We think we'll see if we can get through some properties and demonstrate that. But this is all the work that the teams have done. Mackey's lead with the team here at the Green Bank, Deep, DOH, Chaffa, HUD. Fingers crossed, we're going to be able to demonstrate it. I'm optimistic in 5 years we're going to look back and be like, we demonstrated how it can be done for affordable housing and affordable rentals. 1 to 4 unit rental properties. Those are kind of the 2 hardest markets.
Great, thank you.
This is Lonnie. I'm recalling a couple of years ago, we had a meeting, and I'm trying to remember which municipalities they were that were making a commitment to making sure public housing was at the top of the to-do list. And I'm trying to remember North Haven, which ones they were, and have they sort of fallen by the wayside? Because that seemed really important to have it actually be a public policy objective in the communities themselves.
Yeah, like you've got your local municipal housing, you've got state housing and federal housing. So I think there's a lot of approaches our team is going to use. They're definitely building from the solar map, like our participation with municipalities to support town officials with municipal housing. So that'll be a channel. But yeah, the team is, they're going to play their cards in a lot of different ways. And, Mackey from time to time updates me. I tend to be really, really optimistic, and Mackie tries to keep me settled down, but I'm optimistic with this, the way Connecticut's designed the program and the way the federal Inflation Reduction Act offers additional adders to these facilities, given our financing structure. Like, there's a lot of benefit that we can create through these programs. So this is, like, I would say our top priority is this market segment.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's just good to get municipal people on, municipal officials, but also the behind the scenes folks, your zoning people and all that on board. And it feels like at one point we had them there briefly and they kind of wandered off, but
well,
this
the
is
community
exciting.
the community can be one hell of a big backup.
Mhm.
And I think that's going to be important too, because the folks that, I mean, we'd have something like 3,000 units, multiply that by the number of people who live in those units. I'm not sure how many people that makes, but it's a sizable swath of the community. And with a tiny bit of organization, those folks want to see their bills go down, and they want to see the efficiency in terms of heating and cooling. So I think there's a big potential to have a lot of community backing there.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah,
Great.
you could imagine, Adrian, like micro community benefit plans, right? Like property plans. Yeah, totally. Yep. And Lonnie, like, what is it, Eric? The last month and a half, we've had 2 meetings with stakeholder groups. One was with municipalities, which we just held about a week and a half ago. There was about 60 people there from municipalities around the state. And then a month prior, we had a stakeholder meeting with affordable housing stakeholders. So we're starting to educate, learn, work together, empower. So yeah, this is a priority.
Super.
Great.
But I just, part of what to speak to what Adrian was saying is that if the renters are aware that this could be coming and this could be a benefit, then that's like, then you can really see some mobilization happen.
There you
Oh,
go.
yeah.
That's the marketing. Love it.
Yeah. Well, and it's great to give them tools, like language, how to talk about it, where to go, whom to call, as opposed to, oh, it's out there. Actually connect them to the possibilities.
Right.
Cool. All right, so just moving through this.
Who sent the little
Sorry,
heart up?
Eric's got a baby on the way, so we need to end this before she arrives or he arrives.
No, going back to, being the teacher, getting back to the lesson plan. The PPA. So this is our PPA activity here is really where we're working with other developers who are looking for our debt. We have a pipeline. We have a couple of different developers that we work with. We have a pipeline of about 14 projects worth about $9.2 million, where we would put in 4.3 from our balance sheet, or commit 4.3 on our balance sheet and actually disperse 2.3 next year. We have a new product on here, the tariff-backed loan. We aren't setting any targets on it because we need to figure out exactly what the demand is going to be and how long it's going to take to execute on it. So it's on here. We're tracking it. We're thinking about it, but we don't have numbers against it for the year. We will next year. We have the Small Business Energy Advantage, the SBEA, where we're providing funding to the utilities for small business loans. We're expecting to do 518 projects for 12.6 million. We will commit and disperse $2.5 million towards that next year. And then, as I mentioned, we still are offering the Lime loan and the pre-dev loan, but are not actively pushing it, so we don't expect any to close next year. So in all financing programs, we're going to do 563 projects. for capital deployment of 71.4 million, of which 32 million will be commitments from the Green Bank balance sheet, and we will disperse 19 of that next year. So moving on to the incentive programs. In the incentive programs, storage is one of our big focuses. We're expecting on the resi side, we're setting our targets where they were this year, 500 projects, $16 million in capital deployment. 3 of that will come from the Green Bank balance sheet. We expect to get $500,000 out the door next year. We do have some solar for all money that we may draw upon next year, especially for Justice 40 communities. On the commercial side, we have a much lower target than this year, and that's due to Pura pausing the incentives there while they re-examine the incentive levels. We're expecting to be out of market on the commercial side for 6 months while that reevaluation takes place. So we're setting our target at 5 projects, $12 million of capital deployment, 1.5 million of a Green Bank commitment, and then about $848,000 out the door. On the Smart E side, we are looking at about a 10% increase year on year across the board. We're setting the target at 1,325 projects for $26 million in capital deployment and 2 megawatts of capacity. We do have some NCIF money that we may use through Smart E. We still need to, we're looking at multiple ways of getting to single family homes, and especially getting Smart E to be a tool for LIDACs. This money could go towards that. So we're still working on a plan here, but overall, we're comfortable with the target. On environmental infrastructure, this right now, the first 2 lines, CPACE and Smart E, that's where we have expanded those products to offer some resiliency offerings. And those numbers are reflected above in Smart E and in CPACE. So this is just calling them out to, there's a different view across the organization of what we're doing in the space. Of that 1,300 Smart E loan number above, we're saying our target is to do 20 loans that are resilience related as we continue to grow in that space and continue to launch new measures. CPACE, we're still, we haven't finalized those guidelines. We don't have a good estimate of market uptake there. So we haven't set a specific target around resilience. On capital solutions, this is our RFP where we've said, hey, tell us where there are market failures. We have money. We're here to help. We've had the capital solutions RFP in the market for a couple of years now from a clean energy perspective, and the deployment committee recently reviewed that to expand that to environmental infrastructure. We're expecting a single transaction to come through that. We'll probably have more transactions that come to that, but one that we would actually get closed. Our estimate is we could do a $2 million transaction, $1 million of which would come from the Green Bank, and we could get $500,000 out the door next year. On the investments, again, this is kind of a little bit of a cross cut from other teams. You'll see capital solutions for environmental infrastructure here. But you see capital solutions for clean energy as well. So what we're looking at here is we have some commitments against resilience hubs that we're looking to do next year. We have a significant amount of PPA recapitalization. That's basically where we have projects on our books and we'll sell those off to another owner. So those are the state projects. So we're looking for those to take place next year. We are setting some goals around transportation, specifically EV buses. And then we have capital solutions, just our overall RFP, where we're looking for some significant financing activity to take place. So overall, I need to revise this number. The $17.2 million number should actually be closer to 30. Yeah, so we will look to do about $32 million in capital deployment. Our numbers are correct on our targets regarding Green Bay capital committed. We are looking to commit $40.78 million and get out the door $23 million of that next year. So overall, as an organization, we're looking at doing 2,400 projects for $143 million of capital deployment, of which $78 million will be Green Bay balance sheet commitments, and we're looking to get out the door $44 million next year. Any questions on targets before I move into how we're going to do all of this from a budget perspective? All right.
I'm sorry, Eric. Can you go back to that other slide?
Certainly. Hi, Brenda.
And hi, how are you? I apologize, but can you talk a little bit more about the resiliency hubs? I didn't catch it.
Yes, this is an effort that really came out of like a lot of staff interest, but a lot of other things we were talking about in the community, especially as we were looking at storage, is how do we bring storage so that it, when there is an incident, that a greater part of the population can take advantage of that. And so we're exploring various ideas and various projects of how do we get money to create resilience hubs in different communities.
Excellent, thank you.
So moving on to the budget, I'll start with revenues. So overall revenues are increasing by 25%. Our public funding is flat. So that's the Clean Energy Fund. That's actually decreasing as it does every year. Regi auction proceeds are capped at 5.2 million. So we're staying about where we were. But our earned revenue, so the revenue that comes from our rec sales, our interest income, grants that we're winning, is increasing. And that's increasing somewhat due to grants, but the big reason, the one I want to highlight, is interest income. And that's due to investments that we made this year. And just a shout out to Bert's team and Mackey's team for making that possible and getting that done. So, yeah, as you can see, we've increased year on year in terms of interest income by about 1.4 million, other income 2.3 million year on year increase. So fairly significant increases. And we're putting that capital to work. I do want to highlight in here is grant income. We have $10 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. That's basically what we have been awarded $40 million in the NCIF and another 40 and change from the Solar for All. We don't realize that as revenue until we're actually expending the money. So we're saying, hey, we're going to get 10 and we're going to disperse 10. I would defer to Jane on how that actually gets recognized accounting wise if there are questions, but that's why that's showing up that way. The other grant I want to highlight is we have a couple $100,000 grant, 355 to be exact, that we've been awarded from DECD in partnership with the Sustainable Business Council of Connecticut for an initiative that was really driven by the Sustainable Business Council, but we are a part of awarding that money on. So we're effectively a pass-through for that grant. Moving on to expenses. So looking at the biggest change year on year, I kind of want to divide it in two. You have personnel related operating expenses and non-personnel related OpEx. Overall, your personnel related OpEx, your compensation and benefits is increasing. Everything else is down. And the reason is we need people to get investments. We have new money coming in. We need people to actually find projects and to get those across the gate. Excuse me. So we're looking at 5 new positions, 3 new team members and financing programs, and an additional member of the incentives team, and then somebody focused on contractor outreach. Excuse me.
Eric, you need to get some water or something.
This is what happens when I talk too much. One sec.
There you go. Let me give some high level, just going back, Eric, while you, on the revenue side, because I think it's a fine point. Why don't you go back one slide, Eric? A fine point to make. So we were talking about the utility customer assessment, 23.9 million, kind of that first line there, 24 million. So John, we were talking before about receiving 28 million when we first started the Green Bank. Now we received 24 million. That's because the CL&M, the Green Bank, and all the public policies are helping reduce demand, reduce consumption. So that's why that number's come down. Between that line and the next line, the Reggie auction proceeds, is about $29-30 million. So to Eric's point, that's somewhat been flat over the last 5+ years. If you look in the fiscal year 6/30/2025 line, and you go all the way down to the bottom, you see $67.5 million of revenues. So if you essentially $37.5 million of revenues we've earned. So when we got swept in FY18, we shifted our strategy to build earned revenues, which is to say we would invest the utility customer assessment and Reggie auction proceeds in loans, which, to Eric's point about Bert and Mackie and the teams, have been working really hard to build that loan portfolio so that now we're actually earning $37 million. We're going to share this data when we close out FY24 to show you the trend over the years on our sustainability plan, where our earned revenues now cover our operating expenses and deliver additional capital so that we can do more with our mission. So it's, I met with Commissioner Smith last summer and told her we're implementing the plan we put in place in FY18, and we will have the 6 years of results to share with you all. It's a great result. But what this means to us is we have earned revenues to invest. Right now with the Inflation Reduction Act, we have 8-9 more years of those tax credits, especially our most vulnerable communities where there are adders. So we're kind of pushing this out here. We're all in to try to scale up and enable more investment in those underserved areas. So that's what Eric is kind of leaning to. So Eric was just buying you some time there on the OpEx because that's why we're building.
So but the additional, our putting our percentage on the top of the deal, however you want to say it, still these are still very affordable deals, right?
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
You might remember we had we had a discipline, right, as part of the plan, which was 4 to 5% interest on a loan on average for the entire portfolio.
Right.
Assuming a 10-year average loan. If we stuck to that discipline, what would happen is we would build our balance sheet, which is loans that are paying interest income. And as we did that year after year, which we've been disciplined doing, the interest income that now shows up in our profit and loss statements actually is really significant and is covering our operating expenses. So we are sustainable as an organization now, having stuck to that discipline, which we didn't have before this week. We were being
Right.
really kind of concessional, and yeah.
So it's like annuities or something. It's just like, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Dividend. Yeah.
Adrian?
Yeah, I was wondering, speaking of caps and stuff, I see that Reggie's capped at 5.2 million. If Reggie is more, I won't say volatile, but changes over time, why are we sticking with a cap? And can that be negotiated out?
In 2022, in the, I think it was the Clean Air Act bill, a cap was set on the green bank of $5,200, $5.2 million. Because to your point, Adrian, those allowance prices go up and down. And I think right now, Jane, I don't know if Dan's on and can speak to the volatility of the price, like the prices are really high, requiring other policy things to happen. But we will always, well, knock on wood, likely receive the $5.2 million a year. Anything over that goes to DEEP to support two things. One is the cheaper incentive for electric vehicles, but the most important thing for us is that those resources go towards zero emission school buses in environmental justice communities. So that's one of our efforts. Two is to begin to unlock the investment in those school buses, because we have some 8,000 school buses across the state that need to move from fossil to zero emission. And, that's part of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you for buying that time, VG. Hydrated and much better. So, as I was saying, ultimately we're looking at adding 5 new positions, and I'll talk more about compensation and some of the other reasons for the increase, but 5 new positions, which are all really focused on helping us grow the number of projects that we're going to do. Really making sure that we have people to build on the work that we've already done through our Dream Big activity, our prep work that we've done to, as we thought we were going to win GGRF, to now say, okay, we got to go get the deals. And continue to build pipeline. Talking about the non-personnel OpEx, program administration, our decreases due to decreased use of Power Clerk, which was the main tool for ARSA. We're looking to sunset that, or a big portion of what we were using that for later this year, which will be a savings to us ongoing. We've also made big progress on wireless meter replacements, so we're falling into this category. And prior investments made in terms of standing up energy storage solutions. So it's basically getting the program infrastructure up and running. We have a decrease on IPC year on year, and that's just in line with our memo of understanding and our long-term agreements with IPC. We were due to decrease by a third this year. So marketing, we're forecasting a decrease of about $100,000. That's really related to a bit of a change in strategy. We're focused on ESS. The market's really not mature enough to reap the benefit of the type of advertising that we had planned. We scaled that back during this year in response to some of the comments made by Kara. And so now we're reflecting that in the budget going forward. EM&D, we have about a $500,000 decrease. And that's primarily due to fewer regulatory requests from Pura that we would need assistance with. So in the past year, we worked with Kavala Analytics with regard to a study on localized emissions and how do batteries combat that, as well as some other benefit cost analysis modeling. Moving on, we have an increase in research and development. This will help spark new efforts.
Hey, Eric.
Yep.
I just wanted to comment on the marketing and
Mhm.
and it I probably have said this quite a bit, but I don't think we should ever decrease our marketing budget. I think we should always find ways to get the word out more. I think that it's so important. It's part of getting that mindset among the general public, even if it's not selling particular products, that that renewable energy is the way to go, and that Connecticut is doing it, and is something that I think that kids need to hear. Is will come across the television set or whatever it is. So, and I think also, frankly, that at a time when there had been not so much, don't hear it these days so much, but this whole thing about people moving out of Connecticut, that the green bank and renewables is one of the ways that Connecticut can be cool, and we need that cool factor. So anyways, that's just a plug. I know that, whatever, but sorry.
No, I take that on, and as somebody who likes to spend marketing budgets, I appreciate your support. I think this was, I think we felt some pressure to be from Pura to make sure that we were justifying costs, and from a pure justification perspective, we needed to dial this back from just purely this program.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
But otherwise, I agree with you fully, John. Research and development, we're proposing an increase of 102,000. We have efforts slated for this coming year in environmental infrastructure regarding health. We have some exploration on carbon markets related to the built environment, primarily around heat pumps, leveraging artificial intelligence, and some other things around community engagement. We have a slight increase in consulting and professional fees. The one I really want to highlight to you here is doing a compensation study. This is something that we typically do every 3 to 5 years. Our last one we did in 2021. We're pushing to do it a little bit sooner, so closer to the 3-year mark this time, just due to the amount of wage inflation that there's been in markets. We realized that our compensation scales can get, if we haven't benchmarked them recently, and there's been a lot of other activity, we don't want to fall too far out of line with the market. So it's better to do this more frequently than not. So we're looking to do that this year. The other portion of this increase is driven by a proposed strategic technology consultant. And this, we're currently RFPing for our managed services provider who does our outsourced IT. And the thought was, depending on which option we go with, we may need to bring in somebody additional to help us from a strategic perspective. But the idea is we would bring somebody on that would help us identify cost savings. So bond issuance costs, we haven't proposed anything right now. I'm just flagging this because this is something we're going to want to return to in January. Depending on where rates are, we may seek to issue another Shrek back bond. That was in our plans, but we're obviously, as everybody else, watching where rates go. So this is a potential change for January. Grants and incentives, there's an 11% increase year on year for our existing programs. The increase is really driven by this pass-through grant that I mentioned before with DECD, the $355,000. The other portion that we have in there is an additional $50,000 grant to Sustainable CT that we're proposing, which would fund a fellow there, an additional fellow to what their existing fellows program, that would really be focused on helping bridge our activities, their activities. They would be around for an entire year and help us forge relationships with municipalities and community groups. So we really view this as a tool that will lead to future project pipeline, ideally in the clean energy space and in environmental infrastructure. Any questions on expenses before I go through staffing? All right, so moving on to staffing, what I wanted to highlight for you here is just here are the open positions, and the real big driver of the growth is it's taking us a while to fill positions. But I think this is fairly indicative of a tight labor market that we see. That's not the only story here. It just always takes us forever to hire people. We have, in terms of positions that were approved in last year's staffing plan and new positions that we're proposing, we have about 14 open positions, which are, some of those have been filled in the past or will be filled by the end of the year, such as our associate director for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and potentially some others. The big driver is just the year-on-year spend around not having filled these positions, and some of them having been added for short periods of time in prior budgets. The thing I wanted to stop and have a conversation on here is really around the promotion pool, ACOLA, and merit, and kind of gauge your guys' opinion. The budget that we've proposed includes a 1.5% promotion pool, which is what I think we've done every year that I've been at the organization, and I think every year I looked at prior to that. We're proposing a 3.5% COLA, basically because wage inflation for the Bureau of Labor Statistics is 3.5% year on year, and measured April to April. And then we're proposing a merit pot of 5%. I feel that, just kind of looking at where everybody else is, that I have data points that say that we're kind of in the middle, but I'm curious to your guys' opinions. We've always had, not always, but since 2 compensation studies ago, we developed a compensation philosophy of wanting to be internally equitable while externally competitive. So my question to this group is, what would get us there? And the data points that I'll throw out are, we have one quasi-public that just did a COLA increase at the end of last year, and they're doing a 4% merit for the year. We have another one that's proposing a 4% or a 3% merit and a 3% COLA, 6% merit. The state employees, non-managers, are getting a 4.5% increase, COLA across the board. Managers are getting a 3% plus increase. So with that, I'm just kind of curious to where people's opinions are.
Well, can we afford it?
Yeah, we can afford it.
Okay. Does it put us, does it make us a giraffe in the middle of a bunch of zebras or anything? Our neck sticking way out?
I don't think it does. I think there are other giraffes that are out there. We may be We might be a double height zebra, but we certainly aren't the giraffe. I like that metaphor, John. I think when we did this, these were the numbers. We've kind of since socialized this a little bit internally, and I've spoken with our prior comp consultant who said that my 3.5% for the COLA is a little bit low based off of the numbers he would use. I kind of where if I were starting from scratch, I think I probably would recommend maybe a 3% COLA and a 4% merit pool, and potentially increase the promotion pool by 0.5%, just and have that in reserve based off of the results of the compensation study in case there are adjustments that we would need to make.
Does the 5% merit, does that include, because we do, the top officers of the bank in a separate session, so does that include
Yes,
that group or not?
that does.
Okay.
This is Lonnie. So I'm wondering, I mean, when we look at all these numbers, I mean, and I certainly want to, support where we need to go, but just thinking of my own career and of the people in my life and they're always looking for meaningful work. And are we losing people because somebody else is offering a little bit more, or, I mean, are people really looking at that to that degree? Because it seems to me, and having worked in several environments, including New York City, this is kind of the Connecticut environment is so much more humane. I mean, there are a lot of other reasons why you would work here as opposed to, just what the numbers are. I mean, the numbers need to be obviously fair and rational, but I mean, I don't want us to get into a bidding war, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't think we need to, because I think we've got major stuff going on that should draw really, really talented people, as it has. And I'm sort of wondering if we have any sort of ideas of who's getting the people that we wanted but couldn't get, or what.
I think this is very anecdotal. I mean, we have a very low turnover rate, I think, which is a testament to the fact that we hire the right people, that we are we're making good hiring decisions, but we're hiring people that really want to be here. So I'll let that serve as a partial answer to what you were asking. I think the other thing that we see somewhat anecdotally is it is harder to hire people away from the private sector, and attract certain candidates that are really on the fence. And I'm trying to think of how do I want to put this in this forum. I think not being able to offer or not being able to compete with the private sector, I think could potentially harm us, as we want to make sure that we have as diverse a workforce as possible. I don't have great numbers on that. That's one of the reasons to do the compensation stuff.
Well, I'm comfortable with the numbers, just personally.
I am too. I just like to kind of know the reality of it, the real world impacts of it, and what it takes to bring people to our organization and what keeps them here. I think that's good to know. I think it's good to know.
Oh, no, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, as opposed to throwing numbers out because we're comparing, or we're feeling competitive with other entities and I think and for a lot of people, I mean, I think we want people who want to be with us also. I don't think we want to get into a bidding war if it's okay, well, I'll go there. I mean, you don't want that. You want people that like the people we have. They're thrilled to be here, and that's That's when you get the talent. That's when you get the enthusiasm, that's when you get the productivity.
100% agree. We recently completed an employee survey. We had a great response rate. We're currently going through a bunch of the results. And one of the things that we see are we do have the staff that want to be here, and our staff are, they want to be compensated well, but that's not necessarily their primary driver.
Eric?
Yes, Bert?
I do want to point out, as we discussed, the Green Bank does not have an incentive compensation plan, which other organizations have. Even nonprofits are allowed to have, annual bonuses. We do not. So I'm just saying that we need to keep that in mind in terms of I don't think the compensation levels as they are excessive, but I would like to just suggest that that's a part of the compensation framework that the Green Bank does not have, and which it has never had. So it's a factor when people are comparing salaries or base salaries. They might be getting a base salary when particularly when we're bringing people in, they might get a competing offer with a base salary plus incentive compensation. So we have to just be mindful of that.
And that incentive compensation can really, can be mind blowing. So, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. And as I say, we've noticed that there are nonprofit green banks that offer incentive compensation, that have incentive compensation as part of their compensation makeup. And then there are other nonprofits, just nonprofits, that also have incentive compensation as part of their makeup. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood too, as part of the conversation.
Thanks, Bert. So what I'm hearing is leave the numbers as is, I think, and we'll do a comp study, and I'll make sure this committee is involved in the results of that, as well as updated with the results from our employee survey.
Yeah, I think that's key if you want to sell it to the full board. Really add that, and we know we have, as you just said, the people we have with our organization are happy to be here for a lot of different reasons, and so sell that.
Well, let me just ask as chair: is there anybody that wants to voice an objection? Any of the members of the committee? And it's fine if you do. Just I'm curious.
No objections for me.
None for me either. This is Rob.
Same, none for me.
All
right. Well, then I think we're in a good place.
All right. Well, I have one more slide.
You just have to remember that when Eric's hanging out there in space when he presents this to the board.
We can't pretend we never heard it before.
What, Eric? What are you talking about?
Eric who?
No, we can do
Eric
like everybody.
Yeah, Eric who?
we can do like everybody's doing these days. My wife did it.
Well, that's right.
There you go.
That's right.
Well, if my wife did this budget and this PowerPoint,
I don't have anything to do with it.
More beautiful. That
was a good save, Eric. Good save.
Yeah. There would be. The strategic partners is our last slide, and these are our vendors that we've identified almost all through competitive RFPs that we're looking for sign off and instruction to go ahead and contract with. This is something that we do every year. The exceptions are for Inclusive Prosperity Capital, where we did not RFP that. It was a strategic selection way back in the day due to the split. Carasoft, who was selected by the state for their Salesforce licensing, and we need to contract through somebody who will sign the state contracting language. The state did the competitive RFP, and we're leaning on that. And the other one is Source One, which was selected by the Department of Corrections as their technical provider for a fuel cell that we are financing at their location. So, or one of their locations. Any questions on these? You will see the number going up from year on year, and a lot of that has to do with how we're budgeting, especially in the asset management realm. We used to, frankly, not budget for a lot of this stuff, and they were handled by some of our subsidiaries. And that was causing us more of a headache because it still had to meet state contracting language and all this fun stuff. So this was a lot. It was a lot easier just to go ahead and budget and run this at Green Bay, at the mothership, as opposed to pushing stuff down to the subs. That takes us to the resolution, if you all are comfortable. Is the committee comfortable recommending this budget and the strategic partners to the full board for their approval?
Well, let me ask, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move to approve the resolution. Adrian speaking.
And then do I have a second?
I'll second it, Lonnie.
And then discussion. Is there anyone want to discuss the resolution? Well, hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the resolution to recommend the budget to the full board signify by saying aye.
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 And all opposed, say nay. And any abstentions? Well, then it is the resolution passes and should be noted as passing unanimously.
Awesome. Thank you all. I appreciate your support, and thank you for letting us get this done in one meeting. And I think I've earned a set of steak knives for doing that in one meeting instead of 3. So
compensation.
Yeah, that's right. A performance bonus.
mm-hmm.
Well, Eric, thank you for presenting that in a way that we could understand, which is no small feat. And thank you and Brian and Bert and everyone for answering our questions as we meandered our way through the process. Adrian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I totally agree, John. It was a much easier process. I remember going through the tables and saying to myself, I will never understand any of this stuff. I can't, well, first of all, I can't see the numbers, so.
I know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Teeny little numbers, yeah.
I'm just really pleased that it all went so well. I did want to bring one issue up in terms of looking at the people who we're searching to hire. There's a person to do contractor outreach listed. Mm-hmm. And I just want to bring up something about contractor outreach. We really need to be attentive in terms of having objectives in terms of DEI. In terms of the contractors, we have better have some women-owned contractors, contracting firms, some Black firms, some Puerto Rican firms, some Muslim firms. I don't know what the breakdown needs to be, but we need to think about that ahead of time and make sure that we have a very diverse group of enterprises working on our projects.
Totally hear you, Adrian. One of the things we've done since I've been here is in our annual consolidated financial report and all of our non-financial statistics, we've tracked our spend in terms of our vendors, women and minority and small businesses.
Okay.
We have not done it with our contractors. And that's something that we're looking to add this year, is to track that as well. Because I think we are very mindful of it, and we're mindful that we're not penetrating into a lot of the communities that we want to be in terms of uptake of specific programs. And so we're working with a couple different organizations to address that and to close that. So we will monitor
it. And we're working with like Posigen, and I'm sure there are others of that nature. And they need to be required to have a good eye on their DEI. So it cascades down, so that when you see people who are putting solar panels up in the neighborhood, you see folks of all sorts. And that's been a criticism that I think we need to address.
I hear you loud and clear. And we haven't written the job description for this position yet because, well, it hasn't been fully approved, but we were discussing our needs here, and we recognize the need to, we need somebody who has better Spanish capability than what we currently have on staff in terms of speaking. And that's one of the objectives for filling this role.
Okay, fair enough.
Adrian, I really thank you for bringing that up, because it's really important. It all gets back to not only a perception of the Green Bank, but actually this question of equity when it comes to the energy economy. We know that in the past it has not been there.
That's right.
And we know that in the future it has got to be there if we're going to win on this fight to successfully tackle climate change, because if you don't include people, they're not going to be interested.
Right.
And I'd say the same thing, Eric, and you and I have had this conversation about hiring at the bank, that we just need to be incredibly sensitive and aware of that issue as well, for the same reason.
Well, none of this happens overnight. I mean,
right.
If you have objectives, you might even meet them from time to time. But if you don't have the objectives, you have no chance of meeting anything. So we have at the DAS for the state, we used to have a lot of inclusive programming, especially to bring small and minority businesses, women-owned businesses, to be registered with the state, for contracting. I don't know where that's at anymore. And the lady who used to run that, I tried to call her up or to email her, and I never got an answer back. So she may have retired by now. But the DAS could be of a great resource to get this underway. And one thing I noticed, and Brenda can chime in on this too, when we were both at the Energy Efficiency Board, I can tell you that there was no effort to hire on minority and women-owned businesses. And that's a big lost opportunity. I went online to look at who the contractors were, because there's supposed to be a list. Back in the day, there was a list of 40. Now there's a list of 600, and you don't know who's who and where they're from.
Wow.
So
yeah,
that just shows to go you that there is no objective. So we can do that on our own here at the Green Bank, and we can also complain to the state and to the utilities that they're not doing what they need to do on a state level. But at least at home, we can get this done.
But
Yeah.
I agree with Adrian, and I think the clean energy jobs report is also, the driver for
Oh, yeah.
us to do better, because the needle hasn't moved. It's our
Yeah.
fourth report,
Yeah.
and the numbers
Mhm.
are very astonishing.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess that the other thing that I'd add, just that we need to be conscious of, is as much as possible, and in keeping with those other, goals, is that we use Connecticut firms, that we're not bringing people in from other places, because we have, when you start bringing contractors from New York and New Jersey and
And Massachusetts,
you know,
don't forget that.
we had I used to be on the board of the Workers' Rights Commission for Hartford, and Hartford was hiring roofing companies that were out of New York and would bring in van loads of workers from originally from Poland, who were living in these cheap hotels and getting no money at all. And the thing was, it was just a disaster, and that was, Hartford tax money going in a city where people needed jobs, uh, running that kind of operation. So there's all sorts of things we need to be aware of, but you can make a list and go down it, and we can get the right folks. So I think we've even if there's not any more discussion, I think we've even we've gotten through what we need to do in the hour and a half that we needed to do it in. Is there any other business that people want to bring up for the good and welfare of the organization, as we say in the union movement? If not, Eric, any last words? Brian?
No, thank you all for your time and commitment and opinion. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for your hard work
Yeah, thank
and
you.
clarity. I appreciate the clarity.
Yeah, it is just like it remains a source of great pride with me to be associated with the Green Bank, and that's because of all the great work that you all are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, off we go. Take care, folks. Enjoy the afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.